All right. It is 1:01 and good afternoon. This is the February 15th, 2022 meeting of the Landmark Preservation Commission. I'll call this meeting to order. Let's go ahead and start with introductions of the commissioners. I'll get started. My name's Kelly Wemple. I'm an architect nominated by the American Institute of Architects. Next, we have, George isn't here yet, Brad.
Hi, my name is Brad Gassman. I'm an architect nominated by History Colorado.
Thanks, Brad. Aaron.
Hi, I'm Erin Hummel. I'm a landscape architect, and I was nominated by the American Society of Landscape Architects.
Great. Graham.
My name's Graham Johnson. I'm a preservation project manager and was nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie Johnson. I'm a historic preservation project manager, and I was nominated by the community at large.
Gary.
Hello, I'm Gary Petrie. I'm an architect, and I was nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
And let's see, we don't have Erica. Anne.
Hi, I'm Anne Wattenberg. I'm an architect nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
Thanks. And Jen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Jen Capetto. I'm Landmark Preservation staff.
Great. All right. So next on the agenda, we do have a meeting record up for review. So two of them actually. So we have the January 11th and January 25th meeting records. Did anyone have any comments or questions on those? And if not, would someone like to make a motion?
I can make a motion, Kelly.
Great.
I move to approve the January 11th, 2022 and January 25th, 2022 meeting records for the Denver Landmarks Preservation Commission.
Thank you. Brad, do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Graham. All right, then I will call for the vote. Brad.
Aye.
Aaron.
Abstain.
Graham.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
And Kelly. Aye. All right, so the ayes have it and the motion passes. We had one abstention and that was Aaron. So the motion passes and those meeting records are approved. So next on our agenda, I'm on a new computer, so everything's different. Next up, we have our public comment period. So for those of you joining us today, we do reserve time at the beginning of every Landmark Preservation Commission meeting for general public comments. This is for preservation matters in general and not regarding a specific project that will be under review today, because there will be separate comment periods for design review items, not consent agenda, but design review projects. So if you do have a comment, then please dial *9 if you're joining us by phone. That'll raise your hand so we know to call on you. And if you're joining via computer, use the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen in Zoom. Are there any comments? I can't hear you, Jen, but I saw you shake your head no.
Sorry, no one has raised their hand, so no.
Okay. And do we have anyone on the line?
We do have one person on the phone.
Okay,
yep.
Great. All right, so if there are no comments, we'll keep moving forward. Next, we have consent agenda items. So there are quite a few projects on consent today. It looks like we have about 7. Did any commissioners want to pull anything off of consent? Any questions for staff? And if not, who would like to make the motion?
Kelly?
Yeah.
I have a question for the staff.
Okay.
It's regarding application 2022-COA-059 at 515 Ray Street. And I wonder if someone could explain a little bit about, once again, about how this item which as I understand it is a violation, sort of what the history of it is.
Sure. So the property has a stop work order on it currently, which is why shed A is not clad in any material, because they are not allowed to do any additional work on that property at the time. Landmark staff and the zoning inspector went out to the site and issued that stop work order in person. The homeowners were not aware that the shed structures needed landmark approval because they are not on a foundation. So that was the issue there. The neighbor also reported this as a violation almost on the same day that we issued the stop work order on the property. So there is a stop work order currently issued, and no additional structures have been constructed since that time. So that's why the request is for the 3 structures that are constructed: the pool shed, the garden shed, shed A, and then the play structure. And then with this approval, if the commission approves it, an additional play shed and shed B will be constructed.
Thank you. And then, but was there an original building permit for this site and this was just omitted, or there was no permit at all? Is that?
There was no permit at all for the shed structures. So staff did administratively approve a new metal fence, and that's the only thing we have reviewed on that site prior to us being notified that these shed structures were being constructed. Again, the issue is that they're not on foundations, and it was unclear to the applicant that they required building permits and landmark review. They do have an architect on their team and are working on some other projects that you'll probably see later.
Thank you very much.
All right, if there are no further questions or concerns, who would like to make the motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Julie.
Sure. Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented. 2021-TAXC-010 at 547 Humboldt Street. 2016-TAXC-015 2429 West 37th Avenue in Potter Highlands. 2021-TAX-011 2090 Hooker Street, Witter Cofield. 2021-ZLAM-260 2947 and 2949 Umatilla Street. 2020-COA-155 2100 Larimer Street, Ballpark. 2022-COA-059 515 Ray Street Country Club, and 2021-TAXC-008 2421 Stout Street in Curtis Park.
Thank you, Julie. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Gary. That was you, right? Great. All right, then I will call for the vote. Brad.
Aye.
Aaron.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
Kelly. Aye. I almost didn't answer myself. All right, so we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. So if you're on the line for one of the consent agenda projects, your project has been approved and feel free to hop off. Next, we'll move into our design review projects. So the process is probably coming up on the screen. There we go. I'll go ahead and announce the project that we're going to move forward with, and staff will then present the application and provide their recommendation, after which we'll invite the applicant to present, and you'll have up to 10 minutes to do so. Then we'll open it up for public comments. Public comment periods are 2 minutes per person. So again, you'll dial *9 if you're joining us by phone, or use the hand raise button when we ask for public comments. Once we hear from the public, we'll go ahead and move into deliberation and the commission will vote. So the first project up for design review today is at, well, it's 2022-LM demo-072 at 2400 West 33rd Avenue. So Jesse, go ahead.
All right. Oh, PowerPoint freaked out for a second there. So this is 2400 West 33rd Avenue. The current structure on the site was constructed in 1963 and is a non-contributing gas station to the Potter Highlands Historic District. So the applicant is requesting to demolish the existing structure to make way for a new infill that will be reviewed by the LPC coming up here in the same February 15th LPC meeting. So staff would like to note that the demolition of the existing structure cannot be finalized until a replacement plan is approved by the commission. So staff is recommending conditional approval of this request for demolition, citing that the replacement plan would have to be approved by the commission prior to demolition taking place, citing guidelines 2.55 and chapter 30-6 of the Denver Revised Municipal Code. Kelly, you're on mute.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Nope. All right. Is the applicant present? Can we promote them?
Yes.
Looks like we've got it. Okay, great. So if you could start with your name and address for the record, you have up to 10 minutes. You can start when you're ready.
Sure. My presentation is mainly centered around the proposal for infill. My name is Brian Dale, sorry. I'm with Sort Studio. I'm the architect for the project. Project located at 2400 West 33rd. We are looking to demolish this existing non-contributing service station in order to develop a two-story Italianate duplex on the site. I will hold my comments and my presentation on that proposal, but I appreciate your look at this project and I would be happy to answer any questions you have about the demo permit proposal.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Nope. All right. Thank you for your time. Are there any public comments? If so, please use the hand raise button at this time or dial *9 if you're joining us by phone.
The person joining by phone dropped. They must have been here for consent, but we don't have any hand raises, so no.
All right, then let's go ahead and move into deliberation. So what did everybody think?
Kelly, this is Brad. I think I agree with staff's recommendation. I think that it's a non-contributing building, and you know, we'll be reviewing the replacement plan. So I'm okay with staff's recommendation.
Great. See a lot of nodding heads and thumbs up.
Yeah, I only have to say, as a bit of a motorhead and a previous neighbor, that I kind of love this little building, even though it was non-contributing. But I know that that's not our purview, so excited to see that there's something new to engage the corner going on.
Yeah. Yeah, fair point. And I see how it's not contributing to this historic district, so that makes sense. All right. Well, if we're all in agreement, who will make the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thanks, Brad.
I move to conditionally approve application number 2022-LMDEMO-072 for the demolition at 2400 West 33rd Avenue as per design guidelines 2.55, chapter 30-6 of the Denver Revised Municipal Code, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the following condition: that a replacement plan be approved prior to demolition of the current structure.
Great. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Aaron. All right, let's go ahead and vote. Brad.
Aye.
Aaron.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
And Kelly. Aye. All right, we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. So next up for design review is the same, same address, but this time we're reviewing the infill proposal. So it's 2022-COA-055.
All right, this one's familiar. So this is 2400 West 33rd Avenue. Again, located at the corner of West 33rd Avenue and Zuni Street in the Potter Highlands Historic District. So the existing lot, as you saw, does feature a non-contributing gas station built in 1963. The applicant has requested to demolish that building as it is non-contributing and is requesting to construct a new duplex structure. So you can see here kind of its placement in the neighborhood. It's outlined in white, and then you can see some current site conditions. So the duplex will be set back 12 feet 5 inches off of Zuni Street, like the setback of other buildings along Zuni Street. The building is set back 5 feet from 33rd Avenue, fitting into the range of setbacks along 33rd Avenue. So it's kind of varying on 33rd Avenue. There's not necessarily a consistent setback, so they are within that range. So pictured here is a proposed site plan for the new duplex. The proposed infill structure will be 34 feet deep by 48 feet wide. And you can also see the garage structure here, which will face onto 33rd, and I will go over that a little further along in the presentation. So we'll just move quickly through these slides. So here's the lower level plan. Here is the ground floor plan. Here's the second floor plan. And here's the roof plan. All of these are included in your application packet if you need more time to review those items. So here are the east and west elevations for the duplex. The duplex is designed in the Italianate form and features a raised foundation and flat roof. They are doing more of a modern take and simplified form on the Italianate form traditionally found in this neighborhood. Just wanted to note that additional details will show up in the design details phase of this project. So the overall height of the building will be 24 feet in height. The infill will have window and door proportions and rhythms that are typical of the Italianate duplex form. Those can all be found in your compatibility studies that are found throughout that application packet, and I'll go over those in a little bit. The proposed entrance will be recessed under a porch. The proposed porch will feature a flat roof with a simple square column supports. Overall, the form of the porch does fit into forms found on other duplex buildings in the district. However, staff felt that the porch columns were very slender and were substantially inset from the edge of the porch roof. That is the side of the porch roof. And additionally, the porch features a solid rail that does not wrap the corner, which is more typically found on other duplex forms with a solid rail. And that makes this kind of the overall column size and location, as well as the railing, a little bit atypical of what is typically found on these style buildings. So here's the north and south elevation. Again, these are included in your application packet. You'll be able to see here the front of the garage that faces onto 33rd, and then the back of the garage that faces onto the interior lot side. And then here are the side elevations for that garage. So those front and rear elevations, of course, were on the previous page that I just showed you. The proposed garage is 1 story in height and is detached. The proposed garage will measure 24 feet 8 inches wide by 41 feet in length and 12 feet in height. The garage will feature a flat roof and doors and windows with similar proportions to those found on the house and in the historic context. So the garage, again, will have access off of 33rd. This is not necessarily common, but you can see right across the street, there is a building that faces onto Zuni Street. It has a garage addition that faces onto Zuni Street, but originally had a carriage house that faced onto 33rd. So we're kind of using that as a context to support this garage facing onto the numbered street. And then, as I said before, here are several streetscape studies that are included in your packet. The applicant was very diligent in creating a very full picture of where this structure was going to be placed and how it would interact with the rest of the neighborhood. I've only put in one of the pages here. The rest can be found in your packet if you need additional information. So this is showing that the proposed building does fit within typical forms and massing found on other 2-story duplex structures in the district. And the overall height of the building will be 24 feet, fitting in the range of heights in the surrounding context. I do realize that there are some lower 1-story structures along 33rd, but the buildings facing onto Zuni Street range in height and are also 2-story structures. So that's where we're pulling that height context from. And then again, we've touched on this, garage faces onto 33rd. So it does provide that 1-story height that better fits in with the other 1-story buildings along 33rd Avenue. Okay, and then here is just one page of several compatibility demonstration study pages. All the rest of them can be found in your packet. So the proposed study did look at other 2-story duplex forms in the historic district, and these pages are basically showing where they pulled specific elements for their design and how they're trying to fit it into the context. Staff felt that the building draws from the historic context, but did feel that the proposed porch rail and columns for the new infill do need additional study, as what they've provided in their context doesn't necessarily jive with what they're proposing on the current porch. And then finally, pictured here are 3-dimensional drawings showing the proposed infill. In closing, staff is recommending conditional approval of this application for mass form and context, with the condition that the porch columns be enlarged so that they are more proportional, that the porch columns be moved out to the edge of the porch roof, and that the porch railing be removed altogether. This is a low enough porch that staff felt that it was fine just to not have a railing at all. Staff felt that the duplex porch features very slender porch columns that are inset significantly from the edge of the porch. The columns should be enlarged so that they are more proportional and moved to the edge of the porch roof, citing guidelines 4.15 and 4.16. The porch rail is solid, blocks views onto the building's entrances, and does not fit the surrounding historic context. The applicant should remove this and or restudy the porch railing, citing guidelines 4.15 and 4.16. Finally, Honey, the Highland United Neighbors RNO, did review the application and provided comments of support for the application to staff. A copy of this letter was emailed to you. And that is it. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Great, thanks, Jessie. Are there any questions? No. All right, then let's hear from the applicant again. So, Brian, go ahead and unmute when you're ready, and you have up to 10 minutes. You don't have to start with your name and address. We'll just note that it's the same as the previous.
I would say that, Jen, there is an application presentation in the folder.
Yeah, I just have to find it.
Perfect.
Perfect.
It's that one, right?
That's it.
Okay, and you'll have to tell me when to move the slides, okay?
Sounds good.
Great.
Sounds good. And I'll try not to repeat too much of what Jessie said. I think she gave a good overview of where we were coming from on the project. So go ahead and go to the next slide. This will look familiar from the demo application, but just to position ourselves again in the neighborhood, showing that non-contributing gas station, which I know is kind of near and dear a little bit, but is the piece we're looking to demolish. If you go to the next slide, locating ourselves within the larger Potter Highlands Historic District, we're kind of in the south eastern portion of that, right there on the corner of Zuni and 33rd. The project site there shown in red. If you go to the next slide, Jessie talked about the garage facing onto 33rd, and I'll show a little bit later the kind of reasoning and precedents for that, but just to point out that we do have a corner site, in this case with no alley access, just because of the way that carriage lot that was typical in these blocks has been infilled, which is why we're asking to face the garages onto the numbered street. If you go to the next slide, we looked at a number of different options for this corner and started to kind of settle into the two-story duplex as a form and the kind of Italianate style of that, which is pretty prevalent through the district. This is just showing and kind of highlighting two-story duplexes within Potter Highlands, which are a typical form or a common form, and especially kind of within the immediate few blocks around our site that we felt was appropriate for this proposal. If you go to the next slide, please. So just to kind of draw in and study some of those other two-story duplexes, this is along Zuni, a few blocks further to the north, and just some elements that we pulled out as we're working on our own design. The brick facades, the kind of inset, in this case, porch, the central porch that is shared between the two halves of the duplex. And then really kind of loving the historic cornicing and brickwork detailing that you see on some of these buildings, and trying to find a way to propose something that would be a modern, let's say modern take on that, or a kind of modern version of that. So you'll see that in the elevations in our proposal and further in details when we get to that point too. Also the kind of tall, narrow windows being another kind of key feature. If you go to the next slide. Another two-story duplex. This happens to be about a block further west on 33rd from our site. But again, the kind of brick detailing around the windows, around the cornice. The insets, or sorry, not inset, but the shared central porch. And here, brick pier columns, and I'll talk about that a little bit later to try and address some of those staff comments too. Next slide, please. This one is on the same block. Again, the kind of detailing around the windows, the brick detailing and kind of intricate detailing around the cornice. And then in this case, the shared central porch on that last one, but with separate entrances that kind of give a little bit more definition to each unit. We felt we like that precedent. If you go to the next slide, this is the last one I'll bring up, but on 33rd, this is directly across the block face of 33rd from our site, a little bit further to the west. Again, the kind of beautiful brick detailing at the cornice and around the windows. And again, a kind of shared, or in this case, singular, but central partial porch. Okay, the next slide, please. So we've seen the site plan orienting towards Zuni, the sort of site dimensions orient us that way and fits into the pattern along Zuni. And then you can see that detached garage facing 33rd. Setback on both to recognize the block sensitive context, giving us some front yard areas and trying to keep some rear yard areas between the two buildings between the duplex and the garage as well. Next slide, please. So then in elevation, this is the Zunai elevation again. We can see that inset front porch and the band of cornice at the top and kind of detailing of soldier course and sill details. We're proposing brick on all sides to both the duplex and the garage. We can go to the next slide. And I'll just show the two elevations that are street facing. So this is the north elevation. We're keeping that parapet high after working with staff on this a little bit to kind of wrap all the way around and hold that top edge of the flat roof. And then the cornice detail gets repeated on the garage, proportional to the height of the garage, just wrapping on that front side facing onto the street. Next slide, please. So here we have a look from Zunai and 33rd and how it sits into the context. I'll touch on this some more, but just feeling of how it fits in, both in terms of massing and height and understanding better how it sits with those immediate neighbors, which are contributing structures to the district. Next slide. So just to kind of get ahead of things and try to address some of those staff comments about the porch, and we understand where they're coming from, and after further review and re-looking at those other precedents within the district, put together a sketch to try and address that a little bit, and thinking of taking out that front wall for more transparency, and then pushing more substantial, possibly brick columns to the corner to try and address those comments. And in the next slide, we can see that in elevation as well. So the left-hand side is as we've submitted, and the right-hand side is a sketch response to the staff comments. Next slide, please. And I'll touch on the streetscape quickly, but looking at Zunai, it goes from the Weir building, which is a 3-story commercial building, historic on the left. And you can see the massing kind of stepping down, and I'll show on the next slide how it kind of relates to what's across 33rd, but how we fit within the range of heights and mass of the buildings here. And then again on the 33rd side, the single-story garage kind of slightly lower than those single-story triplexes that are to the west. We feel that's a good transition from the higher corner down to that. Go to the next slide, please. I'm not running through this too quickly. So just those top 2 elevations expanded, stepping back a little bit. You can see the Weir building on the left-hand side on the top, and just wanted to call out the existing 2.5-story historic house that's across 33rd from the site. So that will actually be taller than our proposed project. So fitting into that streetscape, we believe. And then the next slide, or the next row of images down, sorry if you go back. Wanted to also call out the existing garage there that's very faintly highlighted in red. That's a existing contributing historic structure that faces onto 33rd. So we have that as a touchstone or precedent. And then below, it's also faintly in red, but it's the second structure from the right-hand side is that carriage house that's part of, or is the carriage house or historic carriage house for that 2.5-story house on the far right-hand side there that will be directly across the street. So that precedent is kind of what we're taking for the garage door facing onto the numbered streets. And then the last 2 slides we did see, and just wanted to point out how when you're looking kind of first north and then south along Zunai, how the project fits into the context and the massing of the adjacent buildings. And then we'll finish on the next slide, I believe. Looking west and then east along 33rd, similarly trying to show how the massing and the form of the project fits into its immediate context. Thank you for your consideration and for your time. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you. Perfect timing.
Oh.
All right, are there any questions for the applicant?
I have one question, Kelly. Brian, you showed an image where you kind of tried to get ahead of some of the comments with looking at the porch differently. Have you considered the entry to that as well? So would you still try to keep two individual kind of paths up to that, or would you think about a centrally located entry, path up to the doors, or haven't really thought of it that far along yet?
I think we'd like to keep the separate entries if possible, and only because of the kind of the separate feeling that you get as you're approaching each of the two units, and keeps them slightly more distinct. I know there's precedent for both, and that's not necessarily something that we're married to one way or the other, but we do prefer the separate entrance. The walkways would be kind of to the left of those, left and right of those columns.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone from the public who would like to provide a comment?
Just a reminder, you can use the hand raise function at the bottom of your screen, because I'm not seeing anyone right now. Oh, did I disappear? No. You guys can hear me, right? Yeah, good. Kelly disappeared. That's what happened. All right, I promoted Kelly back in. That was super weird, Kelly. You got to turn your video on.
You demoted me.
I demoted you? Sorry.
No, it's fine.
No, I'm glad that you, glad we caught that. No, we don't have any hands raised.
I had raised my hand to draw attention to the fact that I was demoted. Okay, so then we must not have any comments on this project, so we'll go ahead and move into deliberation. All right, how did everybody feel this met our guidelines? Brad, do you want to get started?
Yeah, I'll start in. So I think that, I was just looking back at staff's comments. I think that, let me just pull that up again here. I think it does a pretty good job of meeting the guidelines. My comment goes back to the porch again, and the proportionality of the columns I think should be studied. But for me, it's the transparency. The guideline that I was looking at really kind of talks about the visual, guideline 4.15, the visual and functional connection to the street. So I think that by pulling that wall down or making that wall a railing, however that's treated, I think that's kind of the primary comment that I would make. I think that there's probably a lot of studies that could happen with the columns and whether they're bricked or how far inset they are. When you look at the precedent imagery, there's a lot of different ways that it's handled there. Some are brick, some are wood. So I think there's some flexibility with that, but it's really, for me, it's the transparency between the street and that front porch. And I don't think it's, thinking about in terms of whether you have two paths or one. I'm less concerned with that than I am with the idea of just that transparency. But I think overall the proportions of the building, are really drawing on a lot of the conditions that you see out there. And I think there can be some really wonderful and simple detailing that can be interpreted from the existing structures out there. So I think it fits from a mass and scale perspective really well with the guidelines.
Great, thanks, Brad. I completely agree with you regarding your comments on the porch too. I think that I could see multiple ways of addressing this. I think removing that brick railing helps with that visual connection you were mentioning. So I think that's great, but I agree that the columns, I think they could be wood, they could be steel, they could be brick, but it's really just the proportion. And I didn't have a problem with them being inset from the edge of the roof. Personally, I just thought they felt too slender in comparison to the context. But I agree that from a mass and scale perspective, I think this is spot on. I think everything seems to fit with the district really well. And I know there's a lot of front gable roofs right next to it, but I kind of like that there's variety because the district does have a lot of varying home types. So I don't think it has to replicate what's next to it. It definitely looks like it's new construction and it fits within the heights and ranges that you see around it. So I thought it was a great project. Yeah, Gary.
I agree with what's been said. I think I want to state though that I think the flat roof form on the corner is a good choice because the building kind of holds the corner better than a front gable structure would be. And it kind of relates to structures both on Zuni and 33rd. I mean, I think you can't really turn your back on the row of buildings on 33rd. So I think the choice of making it a flat roof structure and kind of holding the corner like it does was a good idea.
Great point, Gary. Anne, did you have something to add?
Yes, and I agree with everybody. I think we've seen a lot of projects on corners that haven't quite figured out how to make the corner. And this one, I think, really nails it. And I think the detached garage is a great idea because it sort of steps the scale down. The one small hesitation I have has to do with the main floor windows. And I think that if you look at the guidelines, let me just get down to this. The excerpts from the Potter Highlands guidelines. One of the things they mention about the windows is that often they have large first floor single windows are common. And I think I might see how the other commissioners feel about asking the applicant to consider restudying those windows, because it's a little bit odd or not that all of the windows in this project are the same window. And there's sort of no hierarchy. The side windows are the same as the living room windows. And I thought the applicant did a terrific job of showing the context. Really, really, really well done. Lots of good examples, but I think that it would be more, it could be more compatible if those two living room windows actually became more either single windows or slightly more of a feature. As I said, the guidelines specifically say large first floor single windows are common. And I think that would just help the project, but I think it's a terrific project. I agree with the staff's, with the staff report.
Thanks, Anne. What did everybody else think about the windows?
Kelly, I'll jump in. I agree with Anne's analysis. I think the case studies and the similar building types and styles that were highlighted in the neighborhood do show that. I think that the alternative perspective might be just to throw that out there, that being a replacement for a non-contributing structure, being a modern infill, that potentially simplifying that. While I still agree that it is maybe a minor departure from the true historic form, is something that could potentially be justified by virtue of our guidelines that talk about sort of a simplified or something of its time or slightly differentiated, while still being for the neighborhood in mass and form.
You were breaking up at the end there, but I think we got that.
Always, I got to move to a new house that has better internet.
Okay, yeah, good point. So kind of saying that, yeah, smaller second floor windows might be appropriate within the context, but this is infill and new construction, so maybe it differentiates. Any other takes on that? I kind of agree with you, Graham. I was, and I think it's a good comment because that is listed as typical for the district, and I think it is shown in their examples, with the exception of 3234 and 3236 Bryant Street. It looks like those kind of have similar size windows on both the first and second floor, but everything else pretty much consistently has that change between levels. I kind of agree with Graham that I think since the proportions all feel good and it is new construction, it doesn't bother me the way it is, but I would be fine with smaller second floor windows as well. Go ahead, Gary. Yeah.
We aren't really advocating for smaller second floor windows as much as the possibility that the main floor windows facing Zuni might be a bit more architecturally significant. Isn't that correct, Anne?
Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought it.
That's exact. Yes, Gary's exactly right.
Got it. Sorry, my misunderstanding.
And I agree with what both Kelly and Graham said, that I'm okay with the way it's been presented. If the applicant wants to study the front windows on the main floor to respond to the district guidelines, I think that might be worth looking at, but I don't think it's necessary.
So I see some nodding heads. So maybe we take that as a friendly comment, and the applicant can think more on that, and we'll see them back for phase 2. But it doesn't seem that we need to make it a condition, because we don't have strong opinions that is required for it to fit within the context. Okay. Well, great. If there's nothing else to discuss, who would like to make the motion?
Madam Chair, I can make the motion.
Thanks, Graham.
You bet. I move to approve with conditions application number 2022-COA-055 for new infill building at 2400 West 33rd Avenue as per design guidelines 4.15, 4.16, character defining features for the Potter Highlands Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report, with the conditions that the porch columns be enlarged so they are more proportional, that the porch columns be moved out to the edge of the porch roof, and that the porch railing be removed.
Thanks, Graham. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, this is Julie. Second that.
Okay, thank you, Julie. And I'd actually like to make a friendly amendment if possible. We'll see what you guys think of this. Or Graham, I was wondering if maybe we want to remove that the porch columns be moved out to the edge of the porch, since I know Brad and myself were talking about how maybe that it wouldn't be necessary to fit in the context. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fair. In fact, whether we want to maybe revise all 3 conditions to simply be that the porch be restudied. I know we talked about a lot of iterations there, so I certainly don't want to limit the applicant, but I would accept the friendly amendment at a minimum.
Okay, I think that's enough. So if you accept the friendly amendment, then Julie, do you accept that?
I do.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? All right, then I'll call for the vote. Brad.
Aye.
Aaron.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Erica. Oh, Erica's not here. Sorry. Anne.
Aye.
Kelly. Aye. All right. So we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. So the project is approved with those 2 conditions. All right. Next on the agenda, we have 2019-COA-263 at 2725 East 7th Avenue. So Brittany, go ahead.
So this is for project revisions to an administratively approved project scope at 2725 East 7th Avenue within the East 7th Avenue Historic District. This home was constructed in 1920 and is a contributing structure to the district. It does front onto the avenue. where it is a parkway, which you can see in this aerial image here. The west elevation is adjacent to an alley, but that is still considered a secondary facade, as alleys are not considered primary streets within Denver. The administrative approval was for a rear addition that you can see in the site plan here, site work and some alterations to the side elevations. This project did originally start as a pop-top addition. However, staff worked with the applicant to do the rear two-story addition and use more of the basement space efficiently for this home. This home is on a Denver hill, which you can see in this photograph here on the screen. So in terms of the proposed alterations, the applicant was proposing to demolish the existing stoop, which staff administratively approved, and administratively approved that side stoop replacement on the west elevation with a new stoop in the same location. However, with this revised project scope, the applicant would like to move the stoop slightly forward, as you can see on the revised plans, and enlarge the stoop to project out 7 feet as a proposed administratively approved 5 feet projection. This has to do with some of the interior floor plan and the applicant's concerns over the interior floor plan. This will involve altering an existing window opening into a door and converting that existing door opening into a window, which we can see in elevation. So here is the administratively approved plans. As I mentioned, the stoop was proposed to be demolished and rebuilt. Now the applicant would like to move it forward on the facade to the south, closer to that chimney that is set back behind that that cross gable bump out. It will involve converting an original window opening into a door and converting that original door opening into a window. Our guidelines do talk about not altering window and door openings into one another. However, we do allow flexibility on side elevations, but staff do have some concerns over the number of cumulative changes that are being made to this project, which I'll go through on some of the other elevations. And additionally, this elevation is on the alley side, which does have slightly more visibility than the east elevation, which is an interior lot elevation. Previously, the applicant was going to include 3 new egress windows on this west elevation. The applicant has reduced that request down to 2 egress windows, which will be located at the rear of the structure. We are not concerned with those egress window locations, as that does meet our guidelines for placing them on secondary facades and at the rear of the home. In addition to the alterations to the original doors and windows and relocation of egress, the applicant is proposing to replace 2 windows that are original to the home on the first floor on either side of the chimney on the cross gable section of the home. The applicant is proposing to match the design of those windows, but we'll see photographs of those windows later in my presentation. I just wanted to point out their location while we're looking at the elevation. Again, the rear addition was administratively approved and there are no changes to the rear addition elevation on this side of the structure, so there are no changes there that we need to look at. On the east elevation, staff did administratively approve a number of alterations to original windows and door openings behind the cross gable section on this interior lot elevation. And you can see all those revised changes here. It mostly was enlarging doors on this elevation. So again, our guidelines do talk about avoiding that, but there is flexibility given for interior elevations. And because this was behind a cross gable, staff did administratively approve those alterations, but you can see that there are a number of alterations proposed to the original window proportions on this elevation, and that's mostly converting them into doors. Other changes on this facade include replacement of 2 windows, again, on either side of the chimney and the cross gable portion of the home. These are original windows to the home, and my next slide will have photographs of those windows. On the east elevation of the addition, the applicant is proposing a different window proportion for the east elevation than what was approved by staff administratively. However, we do not have concerns over this window change, as the window change for the east elevation on the addition will match the windows that are proposed for the west and north elevation of the addition. So it's just creating more harmony with the addition with that smaller scale window opening. So here are the proposed windows to be replaced. 2A and 2B are on the alley elevation, and 1A and 1B are on the east elevation. That is an interior lot. You can see that they have divided lights, and depending on which side of the home, have slightly different light patterns, but they are both casement windows. The window sashes and frames appear to be in good repair, although there are some broken glazing elements. So our guidelines do recommend replacement and repair of original windows when possible versus replacement. The replacement of more than 3 windows does trigger LPC reviews. So that's one of the main reasons why this application is before the commission today, because it is a replacement request of 4 total windows. So again, you can just see those locations, and they are kind of towards the front of the home, and will have some visibility from the public right away if they were to be replaced. And additionally, if these windows are replaced, again, we're concerned with those number of cumulative changes to the original historic fabric. So we would encourage keeping these windows. And then finally, here is the north elevation, the approved plans and the revised plans. Essentially, the applicant is requesting a new egress window at the basement level of the addition, and to enlarge a approved egress window at the basement level of the historic home from a single window into a double window. These are located at the rear of the home and will not have visibility from the public right away. So while these are a bit larger than egress openings that we typically see, they'll have minimal impact on the surrounding historic context. This elevation here is really good for showing the increase of the stoop footprint size from 5 feet to 7 feet, and how that stoop will interact with those proposed egress windows on the west elevation at the rear. So the steps will be slightly narrower to allow for space for those egress windows and don't fill up the entirety of the stoop width. So staff are recommending administrative approval of this with conditions, and those conditions are that windows 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B be repaired rather than replaced, and the original side stoop and side door location on the west elevation be retained.
Thanks, Brittany.
And just for clarification, I don't think the recommendation was for administrative approval. I think it was just for approval with conditions.
Yes, I'm very tired.
We knew what you meant.
Conditional approval.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Nope. All right, let's get the applicant to join us.
Emily is moving her over.
Great.
And she does have an applicant presentation, Jen.
All right, it looks like you've been moved over, so go ahead and unmute yourself when you're ready, or if you'd like to wait a second while Jen pulls up your presentation, feel free, because once you start, you got 10 minutes and the timer starts. Please begin with your name and address for the record. And you'll just need to unmute yourself.
And she's in twice, so I'm gonna think one of them got stuck. Oh, great, wonderful.
Can you see me now? There I
Yeah.
am. Okay. My mailing address is 191 South University Boulevard, Suite 683. My name is Flavia Montesinos. I am the owner, applicant, and the designer for the home. I'm not an architect, and this is my first time at one of these meetings. What I'm looking for, so to address, the first thing I'd like to address are the comments and recommendations of the staff. The first one being the windows that Brittany spoke of last that exist on the transverse gable portion of the structure. I'm fine with keeping the original windows and repairing those. That was a suggestion from my contractor to improve the HVAC conditions of the structure. So I'm fine with that. My main concern is the west elevation or the west facade and the entry to the home. The current, the approved plans were as the home existed when I bought it. The opening occurs on a 3x3 foot landing. And my concern is the safety of that particular landing. I have two young kids, 3 and 9. It requires some, I've been in the home many times when it was in its original condition. It requires some managing of space when opening that 3-foot to inch door onto that landing. My concern is that young kids might be exposed to falling down the stairs to the basement. The design that I created, and so I did all of the drawings, the submission, the commentary, I was aided by an architect. I think I said I'm not an architect, but that is the functional reason why I would like to move the stoop and to move the location of the entry to enter into the finished floor for the house. As you can see from these are two pictures of current conditions. One is the front facade. The house is very elevated from the sidewalk, and if I were to have taken a picture right on the sidewalk, you would be able to see about half of the house with the screening that you see there. The original, when I bought the house, it contained a privacy fence that is about 4 feet tall. That obscures the west facade significantly to the point that you would not be able to see from the alley. You would not be able to see the bottom of the window that's seeking to be altered to a door, or the bottom of the window that would be created from the door opening that exists right now. If we could move to the second slide of my, here I have my contractor holding up a tape measure that indicate a 6-foot tall fence and an existing 4-foot fence that has actually collapsed. It was deteriorated. The lower photograph shows the same heights. And as you can see, the 4-foot fence from the center of the alley will obscure the bottom of the window that is being sought to replace the door. Additionally, the bottom of the door, or the window that was turning into a door, sorry, excuse me, that I'm seeking to turn into a door, the bottom of that would not be visible. Additionally, I've created a railing that is as transparent as I can make it so that the stoop is less visible. The stoop itself will not be visible from this position, as well as from the front facade, as I seek to have a privacy fence that surrounds the rear of the house. If we could move to the second or the third slide that I provided. This is the current conditions. The headspace that I need in order for the stairs to go to the basement require me to not be able to create a bigger landing than 3 foot 6 inches. In other words, I have too many stairs, and I have a hallway that runs down the middle of the house that's structurally significant that will not allow me to enlarge that landing. And I've preserved the structural integrity of the structure through my design. The roof is being held by one of the walls in the hallway that runs down the middle of the house. That cannot be feasibly moved. And so that hallway itself needs to stay because it's supporting the flat roof structure. If we could move to the last, this is my mock-up of the view from the alleyway that actually is the most exposed view of the west facade, showing my intended final product. I seek to have a privacy fence there that I've mocked up as being 4 feet tall. I would like to extend that to the front of the house. It's not easy to mock up with the existing iron fence that you see there. I also intend to have vegetation to shield the alley from the house. All of my kids' bedrooms are exposed to that alley. The traffic on that alley is largely construction traffic. It's a very sparsely traveled or not very frequently traveled alleyway. Most of the access is either friends of the surrounding, there's a park behind it of the park, or car access from the neighbors and construction. So my concern is to have some visible shielding from that alleyway for my kids. They like to stand in front of the window with no clothes on. So that is my intent there. I'd also, I think that's the extent of my comments. I'd like to comment on an additional or on a comment from the staff in that the windows that are being for the addition, there's a comment that says that those should be steel windows. I have never proposed steel windows, and the approved set that Brittany showed you does not contain steel windows. They are all aluminum clad wood, which is consistent with what the new windows are on the structure. So all of the windows north, including the gable and to the south, are I think they're period windows. There have been a number of alterations of the house and remodeling of the interior. I think they're period windows. The ones to the rear of and to the north of the gable have all been replaced. They're probably 10 years old, Pella wood, aluminum clad wood. We are seeking to match that. And additionally, not present in my application, I would like to install a privacy fence there. I originally wanted to continue that iron fence. When I'm on the project site, I realized that is too transparent for the use of my home. You can see from the alley straight into my kids' bedrooms. So that I would say very well versed on zoning, on construction, and on the actual guidelines. I'm a lawyer, and that type of language is I'm very used to it. I'm very aware of the intent of the guidelines and to preserve the structure. I believe that the door proportions are maintained by this by my proposal of changing the window to the door, as well as the rhythm, the existing rhythm to the structure. Additionally, it's pursuant to 2.14.
Thank you. That's the 10 minutes. Thank you so much.
And any
yeah,
questions?
Do we have any questions for the applicant? Yeah, Anne.
Hi, this is Anne. I have a question about what you're thinking about for the brick cladding for the newly reconfigured stoop.
There are two non-original staircases that go to two openings on the east. My thought was to duplicate those, as they are they've existed on the house for since I've owned it. They look like they've been there for quite a while. So my thought was to replicate that to maintain consistency for this particular alteration or remodel. But I'm not married to that particular structure.
I guess my question is, where is the brick coming from?
There's a demo. We intend to recycle the demolished brick from the existing house. There's an opening in the back that has to accommodate the addition in the back. That we intend to use as much as possible for that stoop. So hopefully use the identical bricks. If there aren't sufficient, then we would seek to match that brick. As you can see from that slide there, that particular wall that you see on the south side or on the south portion, on the west facade, that is not original to the house. It's been matched, as well as the ones on the east side. Yes, those.
Thanks. Any other questions? No? All right. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who would like to provide a comment on this project? Please use the hand raise button at this time.
And no one has their hand raised.
Okay. Is there any recap, Brittany? Are we good?
I do have one.
Whoop, you froze.
Lost her.
Yeah. So
she's been moved over. No, she's still here. She's just been moved over to, there's something touchy about this right now. So I'm just moving her back over to panelists. So
gotcha.
Brittany, sorry about that. You'll have to
unmute.
There you go. Yep.
Okay. The plans are still indicating that the fence in the rear yard would be the iron fence that Flavia previously proposed. So if Flavia would like to change that to a wood privacy fence, which would meet our guidelines, that's totally fine. We would just need the plans updated to reflect that. It's not really necessary that the commission make a condition on that, as that's something that we could normally review administratively. I did just want to note that in case the commission did have questions on that, as it's still noting the iron fence as opposed to the privacy fence as presented today. And that's all I have.
Great, thanks. Let's go ahead and deliberate then. So yeah, Anne.
Can I ask Brittany another question?
Yeah.
Do you, and I don't remember if I saw the map for it, but is the side stoop original to the house?
It's not. It's a wood one. You can see it in, if you look at page 01 of your packet. I don't have it in my presentation.
Yeah.
It's a wood stoop. So the door is likely original, but that stoop itself is not. And we did approve for its demolition and replacement with a new brick stoop. It's just now it's being moved and enlarged in terms of its projection.
Thank you.
Right, any other questions for staff? Okay, so what did everybody think about how this met the guidelines? Let's go ahead and start the conversation about the stoop specifically, since that's kind of the hot topic, I think. And to piggyback on Brittany's comments, I think, you know, obviously we see wood fences and side and rear yards quite frequently. So, and it sounds like they're proposing that to be under the height requirement. So that works. So I'm not sure whether adding a fence changes things in my perspective. It doesn't necessarily, it does mean it will be less visible for sure. What did everybody think about the west porch or stoop?
I can speak. I actually think that that I don't have an objection to what the applicant is proposing. And I can see lots of safety reasons that moving it back, moving the door back and making it a little bit wider. It's a side yard. It's really pretty much hidden from the main thoroughfare. I asked the question about the brick a little bit because I worry that that will throw it into the sort of false sense of history category, because it doesn't look like, and I'd seen the picture, the wood one is kind of a light structure. And I worry about reusing the brick and making it look as if it had always been there. But in that is my only objection. I think the new configuration seems to me to be fine.
Thanks, Anne.
Kelly, this is Brad. I actually agree with Anne. I think that it's behind that that gable and that chimney far enough that it's really not that visible. And I understand, you know, the reasons potentially behind doing that. And I think Anne brings a good point about, you know, materiality of maybe it just should look a little bit different. So it's not a replica of what's going on, maybe with maybe even the handrail or something like that could be dealt with to kind of give it a sense of, you know, being something that's new and not trying to mimic the historical detailing.
Thanks, Brad. Does everyone agree with Anne and Brad?
So I have some clarity to
yeah.
confuse the conversation. So the staff has already approved the smaller stoop to be that salvage brick with a handrail. That handrail design is going to be a new design that mimics the fence, which we did approve on the smaller stoop. Obviously, they're making changes to that approval so the commission can say what they would like. But all the handrails that are going to be installed on the site are going to be new handrails, kind of based off of the fence design, with kind of the loop and circle design. We felt that the design wasn't necessarily historic and differentiated it as new, but just wanted to add some additional clarity to what we had already approved.
Thanks, Brittany. That does help. I agree with what's been said about the modifications and its size and the placement being, you know, further back, and it's not obscuring any character defining elements or anything. So I think that's all fine. I don't have a problem with using the salvage brick personally, just because I think it's a good use of the salvage brick and it'll fit with the home. So I didn't really have a problem with that personally.
I agree with that, Kelly, of using the salvage brick, especially if it's been approved on the other stoop administratively, that it'll tie in better. And from a sustainability standpoint, using salvage brick rather than new materials is something I'm in favor of.
Thanks, Erin. Anyone else want to comment on the materiality? Because it sounds like we're kind of split. Yeah, Gary.
I'm okay with using the salvage brick too, because it's a porch and it's on the side. I'm not really concerned about matching the brick or using salvage brick as giving a false sense of history. I think the character of the building from the street really is what people will recognize as the building's character. So the modifications to the porch and using salvage brick is not a concern to me. You know, I have to comment that I used to live on the 600 block of Clayton Street, and I always admired this building because of the Diocletian window that faces the street. I always thought that was great.
Cool. Brad, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think those were all good comments about the bricks. So it's nothing that I think is really that important. It was just a comment. It doesn't change how I feel about the porch. I think it's still okay where it is, and whether it's new brick or reused brick, it doesn't really bother me one way or the other. I think it's behind the facade far enough that it's okay if it was salvage brick.
Okay, thanks. And Anne, I see you nodding your head. So, okay, great. So if there are no further comments on the stoop, then let's just discuss the windows. The first condition that Brittany had recommended to repair rather than replace those 4 windows, which seems to me in keeping with our guidelines. It sounds like the applicant is on board to go ahead and do that. I would just make a friendly comment to the applicant that if your contractor was recommending it to improve energy efficiency, you could consider storm windows or, you know, in your repairs, make sure that you're sealing them up nicely, you know, with new weather stripping and such to help mitigate any air intrusion there. I assume everybody's on the same page with repairing these windows, especially since the applicant's on board with it. That's great. Okay, so those were the 2 recommended conditions. Were there any other concerns with this proposal? All right, then who is going to make the motion?
Kelly, I can make the motion.
Thanks, Brad.
I move to conditionally approve application number 2019-COA-263 for the application revisions at 2725 East 7th Avenue as per design guidelines 2.14, 2.18, 3.6, character defining features for the East 7th Avenue Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the following conditions. Windows 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B be repaired rather than replaced.
I'll second.
Thanks, Brad, and thank you, Aaron, for seconding. I'll go ahead and call for the vote. Brad.
Aye.
Aaron.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
Kelly. Aye. All right, unanimous vote yet again. So the motion passes and the project is conditionally approved. Next up on the agenda is, oops, I'm clicking the wrong one, 2022-LM demo-078, which is at 1622 and 1632 Emerson Street.
Okay, good afternoon. So at this address, the LPC recently approved a mass farming context application for a 3-story multifamily infill building that will be at 1622 Emerson. So that's the vacant lot, or kind of, sorry, it's not a separate lot, vacant side yard that you see there at the center of the screen. So as part of this project, the applicant is proposing to demolish a multi-bay garage located to the rear of 1622 Emerson. That's that kind of white building you can see at the rear of the side lot. And then also an alley house that's located to the rear of 1632 Emerson. So the garage will be replaced by the new multifamily infill, and the alley house will be replaced by a parking lot, which will be serving both structures. So the proposed replacement plan will be part of the design detail review for the new infill. And so they're on the bottom. On the left, you see there's the multi-bay garage, and then the alley house there on the right. So just for context, here is the site plan. So 1632 and 1622, or the new infill proposed for 1622, are all part of one zone lot. So you can see here the lot, there's the existing 1632, and then in the dark gray are the buildings that are being proposed for demolition. So the large garage that's at the rear of the open side yard, and then the alley house that is to the rear of 1632. So here's just an overview. I'm kind of looking from the end of the street towards the property. That kind of gives you a good sense of the character of the Swallow Hill Historic District. So this district was designated in 1999, and in 2008, the ordinance was amended to include a period of significance that is prior to and including 1917. So the Swallow Hill Historic District includes elaborate examples of Queen Anne architecture constructed prior to the silver crash of 1893, as well as more restrained designs constructed after. The district has a mix of single family residences as well as multifamily. So according to the designation, the district is significant for its association with the historical development of the city from 1886 to the 19-teens. Its association with Denver's power elite is home to many of Denver's most influential and socially prominent citizens from the 1880s to the 19-teens. Its architectural significance is a showcase for some of the best examples of Denver's residential architecture and its association with several prominent architects of the period, as well as then its portrayal of the physical development of the city as the first Denver edition plan to cater to the desire for broad streets, parkways, and parks. So the Swallow Hill designation includes a list of recommended contributing and non-contributing structures, and 1632 Emerson is recommended as contributing. This building was constructed circa 1897 for Alfred J. Broomfield, who was the secretary of the Industrial Building and Loan Association. But the designation application does not make any mention of any outbuildings. So neither the alley house nor the garage structure are detailed at all. There's no mention of them in the designation application. And generally overall, no mention in this designation of accessory structures. So here's the Sanborn maps, just to kind of show you the evolution of the property. So you can see there the 1897 Sanborn, which shows 1632 Emerson, as well as then that alley house directly to the rear. Then you see the 1904, and then the 1925 that then shows the large garage structure. And it does show that the garage structure historically was larger than it is today. So part of the structure has been removed. So you can see there, based on the Sanborns, we can definitely determine that the alley house was constructed within the period of significance. With the garage, it's a little bit more unclear. We know it was constructed between 1904 and 1925, but we don't know whether it was constructed before or after the district cutoff of 1917. So here's the alley house. You can see it has undergone some alterations through the years. It has stucco applied, it has a side addition, and has some window and door alterations. And then here we have the garage. So as we saw on the Sanborn maps, the size of the garage has been reduced. So it used to be longer. And then you can see some of the brick has been painted and some has been stuccoed. So there's been some alterations to the garage as well. So according to the landmark ordinance, when determining whether a structure is contributing or non-contributing, the commission should base the decision on whether the features, whether the structure has integrity, whether the structure is listed as contributing or non-contributing in the designation application. So in this case, there's no mention of accessory structures in the designation application. So the designation application doesn't really provide any guidance. Then whether or not the structure was constructed within the period of significance. So we know the alley house was constructed within the period of significance. We don't know for sure about the garage. And then finally, whether the structure or feature contributes to the significance for which the district was designated. So staff finds that the alterations made to the alley house and garage have diminished their integrity. Additionally, staff do not find that the buildings have a strong connection to the areas of significance for which the Swallow Hill district was designated. The district designation application doesn't mention any accessory structures. And these are simple utilitarian buildings that do not reflect the high style architecture, prominent Denver individuals, or the development patterns for which the district was designated. So staff recommends that the commission find the buildings non-contributing. And if they are determined non-contributing, then the commission can review the demolition application as well. If the commission determines either of the buildings is contributing, then they would need to set a public hearing for the demolition, which should be set for March 15th.
Great. Thank you, Abby. Are there any questions for staff? Yeah, Gary.
This might be more a question for the applicant, but I'm curious about the kind of history behind providing this row of garages for a block that didn't have that many residences on it. I'm just curious what that was all about. Abby, do you have any idea? Or if not, we can ask the applicant for some insight as to why this was done to begin with.
I don't know for sure, but based on, I would guess possibly, if this was added in like the teens or 20s, that's the period when a lot of kind of the larger houses in this period were getting subdivided into apartments. So maybe those garages were added at a time when some of these large houses, because yeah, it doesn't seem like you would have a need to have these like all these like multi-bay garages when this was still single family. So it seems like my guess would be it would be associated with some of these large houses getting turned into apartments and multifamily.
Yeah, that sounds like a good guess. Interesting. Any other questions? No? All right, let's hear from the applicant.
So the applicant that Abby told us is not here. Abby, could you take a look at the list of attendees? If you are the applicant, if you could hit the hand raise button at the bottom of your screen and I'll move you over. Oh, there we go. Got people. Thank you.
Great.
All right. Moving Matthew and moving. This is really touchy today, so I'm going to let them go one by one so I don't move everyone over. Okay, great.
Okay, so you've been moved over, so you can go ahead and unmute when you're ready. And please start with your name and address for the record of anyone who is going to speak during this 10-minute period. Go ahead and get started when you're ready.
Okay, great. I'm John Buchanan. I'm architect, and my address is 1550 Larimer Street, number 422, Denver, Colorado, 80202. Also, part of the team who may present and are certainly available for the Q&A are Jim Schottler, the owner of the property, and Matt Lawrence, also an architect, principal architect for the project. I'm the design architect. So it's Abigail noted, and as you see in the images in front of you, the garage structure is, set way back on the property there and barely visible. And to Gary's question, it's one I've certainly pondered as well. As Abigail noted, where that blue dumpster is, the garage is extended another perhaps 4 or 5 bays. So we wonder if At some point, someone owned both the building, both of those buildings, and made this garages for their tenants, or if someone had an early car collection. But more importantly, the buildings, are not particularly structurally significant, and definitely not architecturally significant or relevant to the neighborhood and the district. And you can see, if you look again at the lower left photo, where we have right behind the blue dumpster, that wall has actually been, was torn down, part of the structure was torn down, and they simply put some frame members up and slapped some plywood on there. So that's really altered the integrity of the building, as well as you can see, it's set at a lower height than the major portion of it. Then when we look to the image on the right, and we see the sort of yellow stucco colored building, that's the what's been referred to as the alley house. Yeah, thank you. Here we're seeing all the facades of that. In the right image, you can see a small structure or addition that's been added on. At some point, it appears that it was done perhaps in the late 20s. And then nothing in the Sanborn maps indicate that that porch was ever, was part of it during any part of the period of significance. I wonder myself if perhaps this building wasn't originally more perhaps a stable than it was a dwelling unit, but that's a conjecture on my part. When we take a really close look, looking again at that left image, the chimney above, we can see a lot of cracks in the stucco, and close examination shows multiple cracks in the stucco throughout this building. Especially notable at many of the windows, you will see cracks that sort of migrate up from the corners and down from the corners, which to me indicate that there are likely some structural issues underneath that stucco. On that lower right corner, you can see where the stucco has been knocked away, and a close view of of those bricks show that those are those typical soft red clay bricks of the 1880s era, and they show significant compromise there. So it would not be a stretch to think that stucco was added as a way to sort of give a longer life to a building that was in serious structural distress. Abby, if we could look at the images of the garage, then I'll make a few comments there, and then leave time for Matt or Jim if they wish to comment. Again, we're looking at the upper right, the alley view of the garage, and you can see, there's nothing that argues that this is architecturally significant or compatible even with the period of significance. The lower left image shows the street side view. And there again, you can see kind of two different cornice lines that don't correspond with anything really of the period of significance and the architectural details of those eras. The upper right image again shows that sort of plywood stuck on the side. When we look closely at an image, we can see that that foundation is cracking, which indicates more structural concern about that building. The north elevation in the lower right is completely covered by ivy, and given the peak between the ivy and the tree of the lost mortar, we could expect more of the same in that facade. So again, I think the main points to be made here are that neither of these structures are architecturally significant nor architecturally relevant to the period of significance, and they were designed as merely utilitarian buildings. And we concur with the staff's recommendation that that we be allowed to demolish these for the new project. With that, if Jim or Matt want to make a comment. I think you have to raise your hand. Okay.
I'll just add to what Abigail and John said. There are mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and architectural details. Obviously, the plywood siding on the garage, the swamp cooler on the addition of the outhouse that really haven't done justice to whatever the intended purpose of those buildings were, and just contribute to the argument that these buildings are just not contributing structures in the historic district. That's all I would have to add. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicants? Gary, I think your question was answered. Nothing else? All right, thank you for your time. Are there any comments for this project? Please use the hand raise button along the bottom of the screen at this time. Nope.
Raise their hand.
Okay, then let's go ahead and move into deliberation. All right, so remember we're looking at the municipal code, so it would need to retain integrity and either be a structure that is contributing to the designated district, be constructed within the period of significance, or contribute to the significance of the district. So those are the criteria we're looking at today. I think we had a great staff presentation, and staff is recommending that we approve the demolition because they feel it no longer retains integrity and does not contribute to the significance of the district. Does everyone agree with that assessment? Any comments? I see nodding heads. All right. Well, I mean, I don't want to repeat everything. I think it was all very well covered. So if we're all in agreement, who wants to make the motion?
I can make the motion.
Thanks, Ann.
Madam Chair, I move to find the alley house and garage at 1622-1632 Emerson Street as non-contributing to the Swallow Hill Historic District and approve application number 2022-LMDEMO-078 for demolition with the condition that the replacement plan be approved by Landmark Preservation prior to the issuance of the approval as per design guideline 2.55 section 30-11 of the Denver Revised Municipal Code, presented testimony and submitted documentation and information provided in the staff report.
Thanks, Ann. Do you have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Gary. All right, I'll call for the vote. Brad?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Graham?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Ann?
Aye.
Kelly? Aye. All right, we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. So The demolition is conditionally approved. All right, next up we have 2022-LM demo-079, another demo application for 3025 Newton Street.
Okay, thanks. So the proposal under review is the demolition of the primary structure at 3025 Newton Street. So in February 2021, the LPC approved an application for a side and rear addition to this structure. However, when construction of the addition began, significant structural issues were identified. Due to these issues, the applicant is now requesting to demolish the primary structure. So just a note on the scope to make clear like kind of what you're reviewing today, since this does deal with a property that has structural issues. So as far as reviewing today's contributing, non-contributing determination and potential demolition, that should be based just on the exterior appearance of the building prior to the work beginning, rather than on any of the interior structural issues found after work was begun, because we don't really review the interior. So the contributing, non-contributing status should be based on the presence or lack of character defining features rather than any particular condition of the building. It should be, does it have the features necessary to contribute to the district? If the commission were to determine that the building is contributing and deny the demolition, then the applicant could apply for economic hardship, and at that point, all the condition issues would be part of your review. And just also to let you know, so based on the landmark ordinance, the landmark process for demolition review can be waived when a property is determined to be eminently dangerous to life, health, or property, and its demolition remedies said dangerous condition. For this property, the Denver's chief building inspector did do a site visit, but determined that it did not meet that bar. So it is required to go through the regular process. It didn't kind of meet that exception. So, okay, on to the project then. So here's overview, kind of typical streetscape of the Wolf Place District. So Wolf Place District was designated in 2006 with a period of significance of 1883 to 1926. The areas of significance identified in the application include association with historical development of the city, as a residential subdivision platted by Hiram G. Wolf. Also, its association with Hiram G. Wolf, a prominent pioneer who played an important role in the early development of Denver. Architecture that embodies distinguishing characteristics of the late 19th and early 20th century styles, and distinctive physical features that make it an orienting feature of Northwest Denver. The designation application did include a list of recommended contributing and non-contributing structures, and the district application recommended that 3025 Newton be determined as non-contributing. You see it there. According to the designation application, buildings that had experienced major alterations that made it difficult to understand their historic character were recommended as non-contributing. So 3025 Newton is a Queen Anne residence, or appears to have been a Queen Anne residence, constructed in 1886. It was constructed within the period of significance, but has been altered. So the building has been covered with stucco, including the encapsulation or removal of much of the original exterior trim. Window openings on the facade have been altered and historic windows have been replaced. And the original porch, as shown on the Sanborn maps, has been removed, and a larger concrete stoop has been installed at the front of the home. The historic form does appear to be largely intact based on a review of the Sanborn maps. So here I included just some snapshots of some of the key elements of the character defining features of the Wolf Place District. So one of those is the presence of porches. So most properties in the district do have a porch, either a partial or a full width porch, depending on the period of construction. For this house and the period when it was built, a partial width porch like the one you see on the property to the right would have been what we would have typically expect to find. And that is what you see then below on that Sanborn map, shows that there was a partial width offset porch on this property originally, which has been removed. And then here, just kind of comparison of 3025 Newton to the house adjacent, and an analysis here of what the character defining features say about materials. So certainly brick was most common. This was originally brick. It's been covered with stucco. Windows, which generally have decorative, kind of often have, decorative casing, often stone sills. Those are both missing on 3025 Newton. And then just the ornamentation. So typically fish scale shingles in the gable end, as you see on that adjacent house, which you see probably likely on 3025 Newton originally, but there's no kind of trace left of any decorative woodwork or shingles or anything left in that gable end. So as we just reviewed, according to landmark ordinance, when determining whether a structure is contributing or non-contributing, that decision is based on whether the structure retains integrity, whether it's listed as contributing or non-contributing in the designation, ordinance, or application. So in this instance, the designation application did recommend that this building be non-contributing to the district. Whether the structure was constructed within the period of significance, the structure was, and then whether the structure contributes to the significance for which the district was designated. So landmark staff agree with the designation application's determination that the building has lost integrity due to alterations and no longer significantly contributes to the character of the district. So we recommend that the commission find the building non-contributing. There was also a letter of support submitted by the West Highland Neighborhood Association for the determination of this structure as non-contributing, which was forwarded to the commission yesterday.
Thank you, Abby. Are there any questions for staff? No? All right. Let's go ahead and hear from the applicant.
And then Jen, there is a separate PowerPoint for the applicant, if you could pull that up.
Okay. And while that's getting pulled up, hi, thanks for joining us. You can go ahead and get started when you're ready. You have up to 10 minutes. Please start with your names and address.
Should we wait for the slideshow? There we go. Thank you. I'm Tom Hunt.
I'm Margaret Hunt.
And this is our house, so you have our address. And we wanted to start by giving some of the background story, but first did just want to say thank you to Abigail. As she hinted at, and we'll talk about, this has been a pretty stressful and difficult couple of months for us. And she's been very quick to hop on emergency calls and offer input and guidance and recommendations. And we do appreciate that quite a bit. So, we're here because this is our house. We've lived here for 5.5 years, and we've been working for 2 years now with you all to be able to live here hopefully for another 35 years. And, we were not intended to be here for this purpose. We've gone through for the past 2 years, the addition effort that Abigail mentioned, consulting with staff, hiring historic consultants, engineers, contractor, and so forth. We were approved just about a year ago for the addition and so forth. We went for that project because we had just had twins. There were second and third kids, and also there's a bunch of unsafe windows that needed to be addressed. So we got approval. We have gone through city building permits. We did the garage project, so we got rid of the old garage that was on the property and have built the new one. Signed a contract with the contractor, started going through that process, and in December, early January, found there was just some really major structural problems. Essentially, somewhere along the way, previous owners had done a bunch of interior remodels and taken out walls and structural supports and put in a bunch of additional weight that then further degraded all the beams and bricks and everything. So, that was pretty crappy news to find out. And we circled up with Abby pretty quickly and more than anything recommended and figured out that this approach we have here is the most straightforward way, both to get back to our house and also end up with a structure that's contributing to the historic district. So that's the background. I don't want to focus on that today because we do want to focus on the merits of the application, but I figured you all probably wanted to know why we were back here again. So if you can go to the next slide, we'll talk more about the merits of the application. Abigail mentioned that it was recommended as non-contributing in the study done for the historic district designation. It's one of only 8 that were recommended that way, that were built in the period of significance. And just anecdotally, we walked around, looked at the other 7, and a number of them had either been already replaced or had some major remodels from a non-contributing status. So that's pretty telling. We think you can go to the next slide. Abigail mentioned the stucco. Our next door neighbors lived here for 30 years, and she did tell us, when the previous owners put the stucco on in 2005, it was done because they did it instead of repairing some of the major cracks with the bricks, which is kind of unfortunate for us, but it's where we are right now. So we've learned to not like stucco, but keep going, if you will, to the next slide. I say that flippantly, I'm sure it's a good substance. We did, in the approval in February, get approved for replacement of all windows on the house, not just the vinyl ones that are clearly non-historic, but even the historic ones. We hired Barlow Cultural Consulting, which is one of the consultants y'all recommend, to do that report, and the commission approved replacement even the historic ones. You have that link even in this application, so I won't go through it all, but it's worth noting a couple things. Abigail mentioned there's a couple changed openings on the facade. One of them, which faces the front, we thought was a window, but Barlow identified that it's actually just a pane of glass held between molding. And he thought it was actually formerly a pedestrian doorway that had been filled in just with brick and glass. And there's also some areas when they installed the stucco, they built it up over the sills in a way where water can pool in it and get into the walls. So that was an issue too. So that was some of the stuff with the windows that I think contribute to the non-contributing approach. If you go to the next slide, we have been doing more research since then. And one of the things we noticed was lack of window symmetry compared to others in the district. You can see it's a little fuzzy, but ours, the windows are skewed a little to the left, and the one on the right-hand side on the top story is wider. And if you go to the next slide, the only places we found in the district that had that lack of symmetry were where there was, multiple roof lines and massing and/or a 2-story porch. So that's a pretty big difference, and maybe is how our house was once. Hold that porch thought in mind. If you go to the next slide, this is the 1904 sandbar map showing ours is the house on the north side there, the top side, showing there was once the partial with front porch and also a back porch that have been demolished. You can go to the next slide. And this is more detail from the 1929 sandbar map. And it's a little fuzzy, but you can see it's actually a 2 written in the front porch there. So it was actually a 2-story front porch, which then lines up with that asymmetry of the windows. And so there's probably a multiple roof line and a 2-story front porch there that's gone away. So it's a pretty big change. And you can go to the next slide. It just shows that this is still the 1929 sandbar map. It is accurate for our neighbors to the north and south. To north, they have a partial 2-story front porch and then a 1-story, and to the south, they have a 1-story. So, it kind of tracks that ours is the one that's been changed. You can go to the next slide. In the past couple of months, we've learned what massing means. We didn't know what that meant before that. We were not architects, but it actually made a lot of sense because we've always had this thought that our house looked kind of different than others in the district. And when we walked around and looked at it, we realized it's really the only one of its type that has single massing. You can see all these others with multiple roof lines, the 2-story porches and so forth. So that's a pretty significant change. You can go to the next slide. Abigail mentioned the word working and scalloping at the top, so we won't belabor that. Just a couple more things. If you go to the next slide, the front door has obviously been replaced outside of the historic period. It's also worth noting our doorway is really narrow, and that's actually one of the characteristics of the district is normal width wood doors, and ours doesn't comply with that on either front. You can go to the next slide, the garage. This is just kind of to show there's been a lot of changes to the house or the property. There's been multiple garages and barns along the way. And as I mentioned, we have finished building the new one that's been approved by the commission. So you can go to the next slide. So last thing I'll wrap up with, we went through the commission's written guidelines on the Wolf Place Historic District, and we attempted to outline every single thing related to houses. We didn't deal with sidewalks and stuff, since that's not a part of this application. And it was really striking to us when we did that, that our house doesn't match any of them other than the really generic ones of like being 1 to 2.5 stories and composite shingles that, you know, are obviously really new. Cross gabled roof, you know, but it's really hard to see that on our house, and pretty much all of them are that way. So the table's on the next slide, and that's in the application. I won't go through them all, but to us, that was a really, you know, kind of strong analysis to look at. That's all the research we did. If you go to the last slide, you know, I do just want to tie it back to practicality. These are our daughters. You know, we love where we live, and that's why we're going through this. It's been 2 years. We've spent over $100,000. You know, we've hired historical consultants. We've spent a lot of time with staff and the commission, and you know, it's honestly been pretty brutal for us this past couple of months. And to be clear, that's our burden. Not trying to put that on the commission by any means. But we have tried to go about the right way with you all, and this is where we are right now. And so I think that's the thing I'll add is, certainly it's our job to figure this out, but we do need to figure it out in partnership with you all. And you know, this seems pretty clearly you know, I think the merits of the application for non-contributing status are really strong. And that's I think a pretty clear decision to be made. And for us would then let us move forward with, obviously we'd be coming back in front of you all at least another 2 times, but at least a pretty straightforward path to get back into our house. You know, we've moved out, so we're now paying a mortgage on a house we can't live in anymore, and paying rent on another house. And so, you know, kind of the clarity of this route and the straightforward nature of it mean quite a bit to us. So we'd ask for your approval on the application if we can, and happy to answer any questions. Did I miss anything? Okay, that's it from us then.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for the applicants? I think you covered everything.
Thank you.
So yeah, we really appreciate your time. Okay, are there any comments on this project? Oh, use the hand raise.
Yeah, I don't see anyone raise their hand. No.
Okay. And as Abby said, you did receive a letter from the RNO that agreed with this, with the staff recommendation to find this non-contributing. So, so we have heard from some people in the neighborhood via the RNO. All right, let's move into deliberation. Yeah, Anne.
I'd like to ask Abby a question. Okay. So I'm looking back at the staff report from February 16th, and it says, which was the original application, unless I'm wrong, and it says 3025 Newton is a Queen Anne residence constructed in 1886. It was constructed within the period of significance in the Wolf Place district. And while it's undergone some alterations, staff still finds it retains significant integrity to be considered as a contributing structure to the district. The most significant alteration has been the covering of the building in stucco, including the encapsulation of much of the original exterior trim, but the historic form remains intact. Based on Sanborn maps, the house has been in its current form since at least 1904 and so forth. So I guess my question is, what has changed in your thinking between then and now?
Yeah, thanks. So part of that was, I mean, at the time we did that, due to the volume of applications we have, we do not always have a chance to go back and really go through the district application. So that recommendation from staff was based on simply, a discussion in a staff meeting. Okay, do we think it still has, some elements that contribute to the district? And it was only when, the new issues arose that then I really went back, dug through all the district, really did that analysis of the district application, and then really had the applicants put together what I thought was a really thorough application where they really analyzed the neighborhood and they really analyzed how their house related to the district and really looked at all those changes. And so it was really, based on the application from the applicants and then based on further analysis of the district that the staff recommendation changed.
Thanks. All right, so let's move into deliberation. What did everybody think? So we've got to determine you know, does the structure retain integrity? And evaluate the 3 criteria, whether it's listed as contributing or non-contributing in the district application, which it was listed as non-contributing there. Whether the structure or feature was constructed within the period of significance. It was, so it was constructed in period of significance, which is probably why Abby, you know, explained originally they had it listed as contributing on the first application. And then lastly, whether it contributes to the significance for which the district was designated. So we've heard from the applicant and from staff that they feel the integrity is no longer there. Let's start with that. Does everyone agree whether this structure retains integrity?
Kelly, this is Brad. I'll start. I think that as we walk around it and talked about it, and the lack of the porch, how things have changed there in the front facade, how it's really been altered pretty significantly. And I think it's lost a lot of its integrity. So I agree with staff on that it's lost a significant amount of integrity.
Thanks, Brad. Yeah, Gary?
And, you know, I think the only character defining feature that this building retains from the district is its front gable character. I mean, it's a little trim, but with the way the windows have been altered and the research that's been done that supports the idea that significant material has been removed in the past, you know, the porch and so forth. I agree that this structure has lost any integrity that would relate to significance.
Madam Chair, this is Julie. I agree with that. You know, when you look at the other houses, they've got the little porch, and you know, of course, I mean, I think that could be replaced. The door could be changed to something more that's more appropriate. The windows would definitely have to be, so to even bring it to even sort of kind of look like it fits into the neighborhood would require a lot of work. But, you know, stucco, it's just impossible to remove. It's really hard on the masonry. I really feel that it has lost its integrity, and it's really sad. And my heart really goes out to the homeowners. I'm so sorry that's happened to you.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I mean, there's 7 aspects to integrity, right? So it retains its location, probably association, but design, materials, workmanship all seem very compromised. And I think the applicant put together a really well done application that proved that. And, you know, their analysis of the contributing structures within the district and how theirs differs, and then the proof from the Sanborn map that things have changed. I mean, it's obvious the windows and the report that they had Barlow Consulting do, the windows and doors, you know, have definitely been altered. So yeah, I have no problem approving this application, and I agree with Julie. It's, you know, so sorry that the applicants have had to go through this, but do really appreciate that you've done it the right way and that you've always, you know, come through and submitted great applications. Yeah, Anne.
I disagree. I guess I'll be the outlier here. I think the form and the structure and the location is as it was historically. I think all of the things that have been altered, the windows and the door and so forth, are easily replaced back to, I mean, the windows are in their configuration, the doors in the same location. And I think that all of those could be replaced back in some format to the way they were originally. And I think that we've seen many projects over the time where buildings have been compromised in this way, and we still consider them, I would say items like that have not disqualified them as being contributing or not, to the point that, as I said, the staff considered it to be contributing when they looked at it the first time through. I think it's a tragic situation because I think the reason it's coming back to us has nothing at all to do with whether it's contributing or not. It's coming back to us for something that's outside of our purview, which is the condition of the house. And that we actually reviewed an addition to this house and gave it an approval. And I think it's a completely tragic situation, but to me, it's really an issue, much more of a process, where this is in the process or how it got to us, than it is with whether it's contributing or not.
I appreciate that, Anne. And yeah, I do respectfully disagree. I do agree with you that, condition is different than integrity for sure. And so the fact that it has structural, issues is not the reason why I think it doesn't retain integrity, but I think that the analysis just wasn't done before when they thought they could just do an addition. And I think that based on the numerous changes, it just does not seem to me to retain integrity based on the 7 aspects. And I also find it very compelling that the original designation lists it as non-contributing. So really, we probably should have figured that out last time. And had we known, maybe we would have reviewed it in a different light.
Kelly, I think or I assume, and maybe this is a question just to confirm, that with the designation here as either contributing or non-contributing as we deliberate, that it would likely, unfortunately for the applicants, because it's been a long road, but likely become a demolition application and thereby a review of an infill structure, I think, in the historic district, right? So, and to your comments about, placement and form and mass, and I think that, in spite of any opinion either side here with respect to contributing of the existing structure, that there would still be a formal review process by which the new structure could also be made sensitive, to this existing district and the block in its context. Mm-hmm. So again, yeah, not to, fall on one side or the other here. But I will say, I think in general, I agree with the consensus of the commissioners that, while anything can be restored, and I say that, not lightly as a contractor, that I do think that there's a number of items here that have been removed or modified in a way that, we have previously applied a non-contributing or character defining features being diminished in that way. So.
Yeah, that's a good point, Graham. The replacement plan would need to be reviewed. I think the concern I would have about saying, well, you could rebuild a porch, replace all the doors, replace all the windows, make it look more like it would have. There's no documentation of what it originally looked like. So that would all be conjecture too. It wouldn't be a true restoration. It would be, oh, well, that looks like that might be a route right. And then are we creating a false sense of history because we don't actually know what was there anyway? So just throwing that out there. Okay, well, if there are no further comments, then who would like to make a motion?
I can make a motion.
Thanks, Graham.
Madam Chair, I move to find the primary structure at 3025 Newton Street, contributing to the Wolf Place Historic District, and approve application 2022-LM Demo-079 for demolition with the condition that the replacement plan be approved by the Landmark Preservation Commission prior to issuance of the approval. As per Design Guideline 2.55, Section 30-11 of the Denver Revised Municipal Code, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thanks, Graham. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second that.
Thanks, Julie. All right, let's go ahead and vote. Brad?
Aye.
And just for the record, Erin had to drop off at 3, so she's no longer in attendance to vote. Graham?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Anne?
Nay.
Kelly? Aye. All right, so we have 5 in favor of the motion, and Anne was opposed. So 1 vote opposing, which means we still have a majority of 5 out of 9 of the commissioners. So the motion passes and the demolition is conditionally approved. So we will see you back when you have a replacement plan. That is the last project on design review today. And I don't believe we had any discussion or business items. Is that correct, Jen?
That's correct.
Okay. Well then, I'll go ahead and close. Oh, Gary, did you have something? You just muted yourself.
Just an announcement. John Henderson, whose house was landmarked, I think 2 years ago, 3 years ago, a presentation of his work 4 years ago. A presentation of his work has been compiled at the University of Colorado Denver's College of Architecture and Planning. And the opening of that presentation is Thursday night, this Thursday night, 5 o'clock. Now I know all the students have been invited, but Historic Denver has been inviting people as well. So if anybody's interested, John Henderson, by the way, was the first Black architect registered in Colorado. And I think his exhibition should be very interesting.
Thanks for sharing that. That sounds really cool. I remember when that designation application came through.
Yeah,
I do need to add that one of his drawings is, 2 of his drawings are actually exhibited at History Colorado. And as an architect, I've never seen more exquisite drafting than the work that he did. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah. Cool. I actually drove by his house today. I live somewhat nearby, and so I drive by a lot on 26th there, and I think that someone must have hit one of the really big windows, so they've got some tape up there, and I was like, dang it. But I mean, I don't know what happened, but just guessing.
Yes, that will be an application that's forthcoming.
Oh yeah. All right, well, thanks for sharing that, Gary.
Yeah, and that reminds me, Gary, that I should share with you guys that if you haven't heard already, we're doing a community meeting to wrap up the Latino Chicano historic context, and that'll be next Thursday, the 24th at the Sci Film Center. There's going to be a mini documentary screening that was associated with it that the I Am Denver storytelling program put together, and a presentation about the context and the findings and all that. So hope you can join us. Yeah, it's free, but you have to register. So if you need registration information, let me know. I'll dig it up and send it to you.
Great. All right, well, thanks everybody. It's 3:18. I'll go ahead and close the meeting. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.